whenever you throw rocks at your ex, they invariably ricochet off the children on the way to their intended target.
Let's imagine that you're part of a blended family. You have a previous relationship, maybe children from a previous relationship, and now you're trying to make a family work. And your ex comes back in the picture, and like exes do, they're just blowing up everything that you're trying to make work. I know you're tempted to just sit there and throw rocks at your ex, but David Dusek has some brilliant advice for you. Listen to his words as we get ready to start this episode of Unbeatable.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life. You're listening to Unbeatable with Jeff Struker.
David, thank you so much for being with us. And man, I just really want to thank you for making a trip all the way up from Florida to be in the studio today.
Jeff, it's totally my honor. I'm just thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Hey, we want to talk a little bit about your latest book, about your video series that came out. We want to talk about the whole ministry that you've got going on. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about how you ended up doing this thing. Let's talk about growing up, a kid who was moved out to the West Coast when mom and dad headed out to Oregon, and they kind of brought you along out there. Can you describe a little bit about what life was like growing up?
Oh, it was fantastic growing up, and I grew up in what I call up north. For Floridians, that's Jacksonville, because it's right up on the Georgia border, and I was a happy kid. And my mom is originally from Utah. Dad's originally from Pennsylvania. Not big fans of hot and humidity, and
and there's plenty of that in Jacksonville, Florida.
A ton.
Yeah.
And so my dad went out. They went out to visit Oregon, and they fell in love with it. They came back. I was 12 years old, and they said, "Guess what? We're moving to Oregon." I'll never forget, because this was April 15th at midnight, because my dad always waited to file the taxes until the last minute. And he drove to the main post office branch in downtown Jacksonville. So we all went as a family at 11:59 to postmark the taxes.
Nice.
And then they told us on the way home that we were moving to Oregon.
And he pulled the bait and switch on you, because the temperature in Oregon is slightly different than Jacksonville, Florida.
We got there in mid-August, and I'll never forget seeing kids out in the street skateboarding, and it was 60 degrees. 60 degrees to me is, bundle up, jacket, beanie.
Put on a parka.
Yeah, at least, a good fleece, because it was freezing. And so it was culture shock. And it was also culture shock because this was back prior to the days of MTV, and so fashions were completely opposite on opposite coasts. There was no consistency for people. So I went out there wearing what you'd wear popularly in Florida.
And you were an oddball.
Right. And I had a Southern accent that I had to work very hard to get rid of. So, first conversation I had in the first day of middle school, which is a terrible time to move a kid, they were talking about roller skating, because back in 1978, that was the thing, wide leg pants and roller disco and all that. So
I did roller disco.
I did.
With the shorty shorts and everything.
I
did you have the shorty shorts?
I had the big old flared wide legs
right.
that covered the entire skate. But they said, I heard all this chatter about going roller skating. And I said, "Oh, really? Where do y'all go roller skating?" And I'll never forget the girl sitting right in front of me, turned around and glared at me like I had three heads. And she said, "What's a y'all?" And so now, I spent about 18 years there working very hard to get rid of my Southern accent before I moved back to Florida. And then I just kind of slid right back into it again.
Mom and dad stayed in Oregon. Yeah. You headed back to Florida.
I did.
When?
Headed back to Florida late 1999, early 2000, that era. Just started firing resumes to companies in the whole state. And I had an offer for Miami.
You literally sent every single company in the state of Florida a resume and said, "Get me out of Oregon as fast as I can."
In the industry I was in, I did literally just start shooting resumes all over the place. I got some great offers, and God moved me back. But of course, I didn't know who God was at that point. I just kind of moved back thinking I'd figured it all out on my own.
How old were you when you headed back to Florida?
Oh, 34.
And that was your first time away from, moving other side of the country away from parents?
No, I'd gone to college and had lived on my own on the other side of town. And frankly, as I grew older, there was a bit of a falling out. And so even though I was 20 minutes away from my mom and dad, we didn't really see each other all that much. I was off the rails for a significant amount of time, then came back.
Yeah, without digging into the dirt of your past, David, one of the things that I learned about you is that you had let's call it a challenging relationship with your father for a while. And then over the course of time, you put the work in to rebuild that relationship, ultimately to forgive and to restore. And I want to spend a moment or two on this because I think for the listeners to really be unbeatable, all of us get hurt, all of us get done wrong by other people. And I'm convinced that some of the greatest difficulties that we'll ever have to do is learning how to forgive, because that's just really, really hard to do. So can you tell a little bit about what it took to restore your relationship with your father?
Oh, man. Let's back up first. Extending forgiveness is one thing. Seeking forgiveness is entirely different.
Yeah.
And I learned firsthand, the Bible says in 1 John 1:9 that if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our trespasses, cleanse us of all unrighteousness. God's forgiveness is immediate. People, not so much.
Yeah.
I harbored a lot of animosity towards a man who did nothing but help me out. And I don't want to go into great detail, but I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for some things that my father did behind the curtain.
Yeah.
That I didn't even know about. And I called my mom one day, this was in 2012, and I said, I really would like to talk to Dad. And she says, I don't think that would be a good idea.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, well, why? And I was sitting in my garage on my Bluetooth. The door was up. The car was still running. I wasn't trying to gas myself or anything. But I remember my wife, Joni, poking her head out several times while I was having this long conversation. And my mom gave me this somewhat lengthy recount of everything that I had done and everything that he had done for me that I was unaware of. And I believe that when we become this new creation in Christ, we honestly end up with almost supernatural amnesia. And I'd forgotten what this I call him Dave.
Yeah, old person.
What Dave had done before he became this new creation named David. And so she's recapping all of these things that I had completely forgotten about. And she said at the end of it, she said, and after everything he did for you, instead of saying thank you, you said something else to him. It was horrible. And at that moment, God broke me, and I broke into tears, and I walked into my house, and my wife looked at me, and I said, I have to fly to Oregon. And so I walked over to my laptop, booked a ticket.
On the spot, just like that?
On the spot, booked a ticket, booked a rental car, and literally showed up the next 2 days later at my parents' house unannounced. And walked in, and my mom gave me this glorious hug. And I grew up in the just you wait till your father gets home generation.
Yeah.
And we knew when we heard the garage door go up that it was either going to be a great night or a terrible night, depending on how we treated mom. And I was sitting there talking to my mom in 2012, 10 years ago, and I heard the garage door go up, and I was mortified. And I heard my dad not nearly as quickly as he used to move. He showed up at the top of the stairs, and he saw me, and he said, son, I said, hey, Dad. He wasn't the least bit surprised that I was there for some reason. And he sat down, and I went into this lengthy apology and said, I would love to have a relationship with you, and I understand if you don't want to. And what you see may look like the same guy, but I promise you, if you watch me long enough, I'm a different person. I just need a chance. But if I don't get one, I'm fine with that. And his response was not what I expected. He said, son, after everything I did for you, you called me those horrible names. And I don't know if I can ever forgive that. And fortunately, I had a hotel reserved, and I was dying for some Taco Bell. So I was ready to get out of there. It was wildly uncomfortable. And Mom said, well, why don't you stick around for dinner? And I knew what she was trying to do. She was trying to keep me and Dad in the same room at the same time. And ended up, food wasn't going to be done on time. So we ended up going out, and I said, y'all have a good time. And my dad said, why don't you come with us? And so I went to dinner with them, and it was really like God pushed the rewind button, and I was 9 years old again. We had a great dinner. And several days later, I went to leave, and my mom and dad were standing at the landing of the front door at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because I had like a 05:30 flight home. And I hugged my dad, and I said, I'm sorry again. And he said, I don't know how this is going to work out, but you just keep doing what you're doing. I think we'll be okay. And,
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's been 10 years. And I go out to Oregon a lot to speak. And every time I'm there, we stay at their house. We just spent Thanksgiving with my mom and my dad and my sister and brother-in-law and their whole family. It's the first holiday I had spent with my parents in 24 years.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. But I had to make the first move, Jeff.
Right.
I mean, it really was my move that started the landslide of forgiveness.
Well, the reason I'm asking, David, is because I'm going to be conservative with this estimate, 1 billion guys, young guys right now that have a very rough, if no relationship whatsoever with their father.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because dad did something really wrong growing up and it's all dad's fault. Maybe it's because they did something really wrong growing up and it's their fault, or chances are it's a combination.
Sure.
But that reconciling those things, finding forgiveness, making amends, that stuff doesn't come easy. It can be some of the toughest work that you'll ever do. And I really want to ask for those 1 billion guys out there, not that they're all listening to this podcast because it would be like number one on every platform in the planet, but
bring it. Come on.
For those guys that are asking the question, what is it like with you and dad today? What kind of hope could you give them?
My relationship with my dad was a full-blown reset.
Really?
On Thanksgiving, and I know my wife's not going to want me to say this, but at Thanksgiving, she made all the dinner because he had put a moratorium on my mom and said, you are not making food for everybody again because it's too much work.
Yeah.
So Joni volunteered. She said, we're going to fly out there. I'm going to make the whole dinner, all the desserts.
All
everything
right,
else.
come on.
So we went out to used my sister's kitchen, and my wife made literally everything.
Yeah.
And we had 11 or 12 people over. And now my dad's former military. So there's a lot of discipline, but there's also a lot of propriety. And so before he even put a bite of food in his mouth, he stood up and he gave her a standing ovation.
Wow.
For making all the food.
That's cool.
And I knew then that not only did he accept me, but he accepted my new wife.
Yeah.
He accepted our relationship. He saw in her what I see in her.
Uh-huh.
And as we continue to have these experiences, they're going to church now. They're active in the faith. To what degree, I don't know. But there was so much more to just biting the bullet. But guys, I will tell you right now, the most horrifying experience of my life was getting on that airplane.
Yeah, and not knowing how it's going to go when you show up at the door.
And you want to know what else happened? The plane door wouldn't close in Tampa. I was flying Tampa to Atlanta, Atlanta to Portland. So I was 3.5 hours late for my connection to Atlanta. So when I got to Atlanta, I'd missed my connection, and it was the last flight out. So I had to spend the night on Delta foot the bill for it, but I had to spend the night in a hotel in Atlanta,
wondering what this is what's going to happen.
God,
tomorrow.
I'm going to have to wait another 20 because I was all ramped up and ready to get this thing done. And as it turned out, I was going to get there really late at night. And I wouldn't have been to clear thinking. And so I got to have a whole afternoon to sit with my mom and dad instead. So I think it was just a matter of, I wasn't quite ready yet. So I got stuck, but that was awful. Well, stuck in a hotel alone.
Yeah. For the guys out there that are hearing you that have a really rough relationship with a parent, especially with their dad, you didn't know walking up to the door how this thing was going to turn out, but you knew I got to take the first step. I got to do my part, and whatever happens next. And I hope that people are hearing from you, and they're in the back of their mind, they know I need to get on an airplane, or I need to make a phone call, and I need to do my part. I don't have any control over how this ends up, but I got to do my part.
Well, the reminder that I gave myself over and over again, and my wife did, and the people that were praying in advance of me going to this thing, because I had spoken to people about it. We are not responsible for how people respond when we ask for forgiveness.
That's right.
That's between them and God, whatever. At that point, our banner is clear. We have sought forgiveness with a true and open and authentic heart. And what they do with that is on them. And it took probably 6 years for my dad to really get it.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those things where we had this joyous hugging
father-son moment. It was all over in a
moment.
second. Yeah.
I was expecting it to be, I forgive you, I love you, and it just did not go that route. And it took a lot of repetition. It took a lot of consistency. You have to learn how the man communicates. My dad doesn't do email. He doesn't do text messaging. He doesn't do
old
voicemail.
School, to say the least.
He doesn't even like fax machines, right? So when I call him, they're usually very short calls. And my mom told me not too long ago that even though they last maybe 3 or 4 minutes, he just does not like to talk on the phone. He always comes home, because I call him at the office. The man's 85, still goes to work every day. I call him at the office, and then he'll go home and tell my mom absolutely everything we talked about, even if it's a 5-minute conversation. Really? And she said, it means that much to your father that you just call him just to say hi.
Yeah. Well, David, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you're a guy who has made some mistakes in the past. You don't hide those mistakes. You're willing to own them. And perhaps some of those mistakes had to do with a marriage and the children in your first relationship. Without going into all of the details, I don't want to spend the whole episode doing that. Can you kind of talk about how things ended up with your first wife and the divorce and the children, the 2 children you guys had together that to some degree stayed with her?
Yeah, well, they did stay with her, actually. When the divorce happened, we were in Florida, and she's originally from the Pacific Northwest. So she decided to move back to Washington
Taking the
State.
children, heading back.
Taking the kids. I didn't want to be that guy who rocked the boat. So I said, you take the kids. They're going to be better off with mom anyway. And so I became a summertime dad, which was painful at best. And at some point, she decided that she wanted to move back to Florida. Really not 100% sure why. She said it's because she wanted the kids to be near me, which was an answer to prayer, because I had lived a whole year without my kids and it was awful. And so she came back and lived in an apartment. And so we started seeing my kids every so often. And then obviously, there's a lot more to that story, because later on, she was diagnosed with cancer very young. She was in her 30s, and moved back out west for cancer treatment. My daughter moved in with now I'm remarried, moved in with my wife and my 3 stepkids, but my son went with his mom. And so I didn't spend much time at all with my son, Jordan, who that's a whole other story of me being a prodigal. And then, of course, it's generational. I was a prodigal, and then I ended up with one as well. So a lot of things went down over that season, including my salvation. I met the Lord after everything kind of fell apart. I had my car and stuff in the trunk, lost the house, kids. That was it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were living out of your car?
Well, no, I was in my car trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I actually met the Lord at the top of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge over Tampa Bay.
All right. Tell everybody what happened.
There's so much truth to, you don't know how much you need Jesus until Jesus is all you have. But here I am driving my car. I got no place to go. And as I'm driving across the top of the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, it is notoriously a jumper bridge. So there are actually crisis intervention phones about every 50 meters or so across both sides of the bridge. And as I got to the highest point of the bridge, I remember saying, God, if you exist, this will be an excellent time to show up, because I'm shattered. And Jeff, every hair on my arm stood up, and I knew that he was real. And I drove down the other side of New Creation. I was baptized in the Gulf of Mexico shortly thereafter, and in ministry several years later. I mean, it was that is my road to Damascus, the top of that bridge. Yeah. And one of the coolest things about that bridge is every time I fly anywhere, I have to drive over it to go do ministry, and I travel 100 days a year. So I get to drive over that same bridge where it all started. Yeah. It was just an incredible experience.
Well, I heard you say just recently about the challenges of building a family. So I want to kind of lay the groundwork, and then I want you to describe the hard work that you did as a husband, as a dad, to bring a blended family together, because the average family in our country is blended. Previous relationships, children from previous relationships come together and try to figure out how to make these things work, but there's a host of problems. We're not going to go into all of the problems there, but you had 2 children with an ex-wife who was diagnosed with cancer, and just go ahead and let everybody know what happened to your ex-wife.
She was diagnosed with cancer, colon cancer, in November of 2007 and died May 28th, 2009. So she died 18 months to the day after her diagnosis.
You were already remarried at the time. You have your new wife has 3 children, and now you're trying to learn how to be a husband and a father to 3 children when your ex-wife passes and you have 2 other children that are that need a dad, basically.
Yeah.
They've needed a dad all along, but now they really need a dad. So I hope somebody's driving around listening to this episode right now saying, he's describing exactly what's going on in my life. And it feels like every day when I go home, it's a war zone, and I feel like a total failure at home. I got things figured out at work, but I cannot figure out how to make this blended family work. Would you just describe some of the challenges and how you face those challenges of building a family?
Wow.
After all of that.
Well, you know, my daughter, when my ex-wife was diagnosed with cancer, moved in with us. So we had 4 kids, 1 biological kid of mine and 3 step kids. And the great thing was that the girls are the same age and in the same grade.
That's cool. So they're become friends.
They were living in a bunk bed in the same room when they could have more than easily had their own space. They just loved, they loved hanging out together. So they were best friends from the age of 10 on, and still are, you know, I mean, even to this day, they're closing in on 30 and they're still great friends.
Very nice.
Then my son came back in when she passed away, and he had not chosen the wisest path.
He made some mistakes. Let's just put it that way, right?
Was dabbling in things that he shouldn't have dabbled in, and basically had some addiction issues. And we went through a crisis there as well. But I mean, just look, 41% of the guys walking around the world are divorced, remarried, blended, like you're saying. And unless you've spilled the same blood and the same mud, you don't know what it's like to raise another man's kids part-time, because we still had, their dad was active. So I had, about 60% of the time I had her kids under the roof. And I think the number one thing that really set the tone for blending successfully, if there is such a thing.
That's what I'm asking. What's the secret sauce? Because lots of guys are trying to figure this one out.
Love mom no matter what.
Okay.
You've got to model what you want your children to ultimately marry. And so in spite of the conflicts, even if we had conflict internally between my wife and I, we made sure that all of the kids, regardless of, there was no step in our house.
Yeah.
We just didn't use that. My daughter still calls her sister, you know, even though they're not biologically sisters. It's just, the blend was all God to start with. I mean, really, we didn't have the struggles that I know that some do, but there was a lot of infighting occasionally. Yeah. There was 2 kids that had no mother, who were really kind of not sure how to take their stepmom, who became their full-time maternal figure anyway. So there was some conflict there. There were some hurt feelings all around the house. And so we just had to work through those a day at a time. And forgiveness was always on the front line. I mean, if you're not forgiving and you're hanging on to animosity, then you can never be freed.
Right.
You know, they say unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You're never going to get through what you're dealing with if you first don't love each other. And it starts with mom and dad. Yeah. You know, it's a second marriage, and the statistics on second marriages are more dreadful than great. Yep. Yeah, they're more dreadful than first marriages. So we both made a concerted effort to keep our vertical walk with the Lord right and our marriage right and bring the kids along. And that's not saying we blended perfectly. And there are some times, guys, there are certain situations as the designated disciplinarian in the home.
Wait till dad gets home, guy.
Right. There are some lines that you don't want to cross with a non-biological child that you can cross with your own. You know, you can knock them into next week if they're yours. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean? Yeah. But you don't want to walk into the mommy clause while you're trying to discipline one of her children. Right. And so that was where we had probably our greatest struggles is, okay, where are the lines on my responsibility, my limits? Who's having the difficult conversations with young boys? So that was a struggle too. And I mean, I believe me, anybody that's listening, I feel your pain. I know what you're going through. You just get up and you do the work.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said just a second ago. The guy or the gal that's listening right now who's in a blended family trying to make this marriage work and have children. And by the way, there's an ex or there's an, the baby daddy or an ex-wife out there that still is, complicating things. When we started, when I asked you the secret sauce, I am certain you shock some people with your answer, because I assume that they're thinking, well, certainly it has to do with setting some rules and the family, the way the family behaves, and all those things are important. But you said something that I think needs to be said again. So tell everybody, what was the secret sauce that made this thing work for you guys?
The best way to love your children is to love their mom.
Yeah.
And forgive fast.
Right. The reason why I'm asking you to say that a second time is because what you're describing is, hey, you have to show the kind of family that you want your family to become. But not only that, show your children the kind of family that you hope they will have one day. And it's not easy. I mean, just raising a family anywhere on the planet today is not easy, let alone raising a blended family.
Well, and you're also dealing with other parents, ex-spouses. And I will make this statement, and guys, ladies, you'll probably want to write it down.
Unless you're driving, keep driving.
Yeah,
you don't have to start writing while you're driving.
Make a voice memo. Yeah, sorry about that. Whenever you throw rocks at your ex, they invariably ricochet off the children on the way to their intended target.
Oh boy, I hope you guys heard that one. Say that one more time, because they need to hear it again.
If you throw rocks at your ex,
and it's easy to throw rocks at the ex, let's just be honest,
they will invariably ricochet off the children on the way to their intended target.
Yeah.
You cannot diss mama and not have it bang off one of the kids on the way.
Yeah.
They'll hear the closed door conversations. They'll hear you disparaging ex-husband, ex-wife. And what it will do is it will undermine every bit of effort you're making in your home in a moment of anger. Words have a long shelf life, man.
Yeah,
kids don't forget stuff.
Yeah.
And they'll remember what you say. Even if you say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, they're going to hang on to it.
Yeah.
The jury will not disregard what they just heard. Let's put it that way.
That is such great advice, because when you're in a heated argument about, a blended family, you want so bad to say something really bad about the spouse, about the ex. But if you do that, a lot of that is going to make its way back to you. So
it's going to come back. It's going to boomerang.
Yeah. Learning to keep your mouth shut. That's something I'm still working on.
Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it.
Oh, that's a good question right there to keep in mind.
Do you want to build a successful family, or do you want to, in a moment of anger? I have a ready, fire, aim mouth. Sometimes I forget to dial in the coordinates. I just send, fire for effect, and I hit the wrong spot. And I've said things, I promise you, to my wife from years ago, that she'll say, that is just like what you said in 2004. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
She's keeping a record from 2004.
No, it's just in the databanks.
Yeah,
They've got all these windows open, and it just comes back, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you even remember that. Yeah. I forgot that I said it. And I said some things, honestly, Jeff, to my son that came back on me that I had completely forgotten about, that was the linchpin to us restoring our relationship also. So, I mean, words... The tongue has the power to bring life and bring death.
Oh, yeah.
Same mouth, same person. It's what we choose to say in the heat of anger that can come back badly.
Okay, so now let's ratchet it up a notch. Just because it's already hard enough, let's just make it really hard. Let's talk the stresses and the pressures that go along with the military and trying to be a good dad or trying to be a good mom, but also serving in the military, and all of the pressures that go along with that. And I'm asking you to kind of introduce this part of the conversation, because David, you're really working hard to challenge guys to be the kind of men that they should be all along.
Absolutely. And I say often that life is about balance. People use the word accountability. I even saw that you had done something recently about accountability as well. And accountability is one of the most maligned words in the English language, especially in the lives of men, because what it does is it conjures up these ideas of guys scrolling through our internet history and asking us what we're thinking about. And it's become this, don't do this, don't do that, don't look at this, say that. I mean, it's always don't, when in fact, accountability is really more about balance. It's making sure that, look, if you're an accountant, you are going to be in the office from January 1 to April 15th for 90 hours a week. Yeah. There's no way around
Basically, from before the sun comes up till it goes down.
If you're in the military, there are going to be integrated deployments that come in and out of your life where you're going to be away from home for 7, 8, 9, 10 months out of a given year. We're going to miss oftentimes an entire year of your kid growing up. When you're there, you have to be all in. When you're coming home from the office, just remind yourself, I am going into the most important meeting of my day. Regardless of how awful your day was, no one cares what you do for work. They want dad.
That's
they
right.
want husband. So, and accountability, because it's about balance, accountability requires an accountability partner. And I think one of the game changers in my life has been having a battle buddy in my life to say, I haven't seen a date night in your calendar.
Yeah.
When was the last time y'all went out without the kids, without the pizza, without the $5 value meals? When was the last time you just went out and spent the evening with your wife? Because again, bring it full circle. Loving your wife is how you love your kids. So when you start integrating all of these other things, work, military deployments, training schedules, all of the things that go hand in hand, National Training Center where you're gone for a couple of weeks, all these things that come into play. When you're home, you have to be there. You can't just be physically present. There's a lot of absentee moms and dads that are physically in the room, and we're just so disengaged. I'm guilty of it myself and have been before, where I'm still focused on work, and I work from home. And there are times when my wife will walk by the laptop with me sitting in front of it at 9:00 at night, and she'll ask me, "Are you planning on coming home from the office today?"
While you're sitting right next to her.
I'm there, but I'm not.
But you're not there.
I'm not
and
there.
She knows, and you know that you're not there.
Sure. Eye contact, caring, responding, listening.
Yeah.
That will oftentimes stave off the tempest of accumulated hurt. Because what happens is things accumulate. And your wife or your husband may just go completely off the rails on something relatively small, but you have to understand that there are things that have built up to that breaking point that we can help defend and stave off if we spend the right amount of time just loving our family.
Yeah.
But office, when you come back from a deployment, you redeploy, ground your gear, love your kids, love mom. You can clean up and check everything back in later. They are your number one ministry and your number one priority.
Yeah. When you're at home, be all the way at home.
Yeah.
When you're at work, be all the way at work. Sure, give it everything you got. But when you're at home, be all the way at home and give your family everything that you got.
Exactly. And that's the balance that everybody needs.
Yeah. David, you describe in some of your books and in your video series, you describe what it looks like to really know, to open yourself up, to be accountable to somebody else, to have a dude in your life that's got your six. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that for just a second, because as I look out over society, and I don't mean American society, wherever I travel around the world, I see the same thing. I see a lot of guys that are really busy, men especially. Now, this is true of women as well, that are busy, and you've got 100 acquaintances. Or let's just put it this way. You got 250 people that you communicate with on social media, but you really don't have one legit relationship that knows you deeply, can speak some truth into your life. And all 100 of those casual acquaintances don't equal one really deep relationship that knows you and can prevent you from making some big catastrophic mistakes with your life. So how does a guy get to that relationship?
Okay, well, the first thing you need to know is it's not just accountability. I believe that there are 3 needs every man has. There's more than 3, but 3 big ones: support, encouragement, and accountability. Support is when you can't get up off the ground. Life is
somebody's going to grab you and help pick you up,
pull you by the straps off of the battlefield and get you cover so that you can at least live to fight another day. Encouragement. I can count on one hand how many times my father has said he's proud of me, and I'm 56 years old, and I can still have fingers left.
Wow.
I have lost count of how many times my best friend has said, "You know what, dude, you're a good man. I just saw what you posted. I love you for who you are. You're a great father. You're a great husband," whatever. Those little things also help me live to fight another day. And then, of course, obviously accountability, which we won't beat a dead accountability horse. But you cannot hang a banner in the parking lot of a church, for example, and proclaim it the year of discipleship when most men have 100 acquaintances and no friends.
And not one real friend.
Right. And I've kind of created a mental algorithm on how you get there. If you think about a standard issue deployment, day 1 of a 9-month deployment, 4 men hop into an armored vehicle, a Humvee, and they don't necessarily know each other all that well. They have the same unit patch. They've been at briefings together. They travel together, but they haven't spent a lot of time together. They might even be, in the same division and haven't really been together at all. But these same 4 men will mount up in the same Humvee, sleep in the same plywood box, go outside the wire, fight the same enemy in the same dirt box 9 months straight. And what will happen on the 9th month is a guy will get in, driver's seat, someone jumps in the right seat, comms guy up on the turret, and the driver looks over at the guy in the right seat and says, "Are you all right?" And he can actually tell that there's something wrong now.
Without saying a word.
Just with the non-visibles.
Yeah, without saying a word.
And then the guy in the right seat proceeds to tell him that his wife has left. He has no home. She wants a divorce. He's got 2 months left on this particular deployment, and he's heartbroken. Now, on the first day, they're talking about how many kids you got, how long you've been in the Army, and who's your favorite college football team. And then on the 9th month, they're talking about these life-altering, devastating, really emotional events.
Yeah.
If they're the same guys in the same truck, in the same sandbox, fighting the same enemy, there's only one variable, and that's time. Time develops trust. If I don't spend time with you, I will never trust you. If I don't trust you, there'll never be a relationship. Mm-hmm. Think about dating your wife. You didn't pick her up the first Saturday of the month, take her out for pancakes for an hour, do a quick devotional, and then take her home, and then pick her up the next month. You couldn't get enough of that woman. Right. You wanted to spend time with her. It didn't matter what you were doing. It was who you were with. The same thing holds true for brotherhood. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't have to go to a church event. You don't have to go to a men's conference. You don't have to be plugged into a Bible study at your church. I mean, it's nice if you are. But go shooting, go fishing, go play golf. Whatever you love to do, take somebody with you, because as we spend time with a man, we'll go from, how about them Gators? Sorry, I'm a Florida boy. How about them Gators to, I think my wife hates me. And the only difference between the first conversation and the second is the fact that I have spent enough time with you now that I can trust you. There will be no rebuke, no reproach. You're not going to browbeat me or make me feel stupid. You are going to give me wise counsel. You're going to stand with me in the fight. You're going to encourage me when I can't go on to fight one more day. And you're going to hold me accountable just to make sure that I have balance and that I'm not about ready to step off the edge of doing something stupid.
Yeah. The information you're hearing from David right now is priceless. And David, I got this little section or segment on this show that I like to do. We call it the high five. It's my way of kind of reaching across the studio right now and giving you a big high five. And as I was preparing for this interview with you, I was thinking back to probably the greatest gift that I got while I was in the Army, and it's the gift of brotherhood. The awards, all of the awesome training, the accolades and the responsibilities, none of that stuff compared to the brotherhood that I had while I was in the military. And I'm thinking about a guy or a gal who's listening to this episode right now, just heard what you have to say, and they're thinking, I don't have that guy. I don't even know where to start. So here's what I want to do with this high five segment. I want to have a little fun, but let's just talk about what to look for if you were to try to find like the right kind of dude, if you're a guy, the right kind of gal, if you're a woman, to be your wingman, if in terms of pilots, or to be your ranger buddy, which I would just describe. Because one of the greatest things that happened to me is I got a ranger buddy who knew me and trusted me. I trusted them. We could go deep with each other, and he got me out of a lot of trouble, and I tried to get him out of some trouble. So here's my high five segment. I want us to go back and forth just a little bit. If you were to look for something in a ranger buddy, if you were to look for something out there, a guy who fit this bill, what would you describe them as? Well, number one on my list is they need to be strong where I'm weak. And I hope I'm the kind of guy who will be strong where they're weak. I'm telling you this because in the classic Ranger School pair, a two-person buddy team will go through extreme periods of food deprivation and sleep deprivation. I've always said the ideal buddy team, one of you can handle the loss of food for a long time and the other one can handle the loss of sleep. So you can say, hey man, if you give me a little bit of that food, I'll stay awake for you. And I'll stay awake for you if I can have a little bit of your food. And where I'm weak, you're strong. And where you're strong, I'm weak. What would you put on your list to look for in a Ranger buddy?
First and foremost, full-blown transparency and authenticity. Don't blow smoke. Don't tell me everything is awesome.
Get real.
Don't tell me everything is awesome when it's not.
Yeah.
because I want to be able to, I want an open door to say, look, this is a part of my life right now that really stinks. And I want you to say, I've been through that. Because that's authenticity goes a long, long way.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about you have a friend who. I want to hear what's happening in your life. Right. And one of the examples that I have is with my particular battle buddy in life. His name's David, also ironically.
Just to keep it easy on each other.
Yeah,
right?
It's much easier than Jonathan. But I have lost count of how many times we've started a conversation with, I've never told anybody this, but.
Right,
if you can start a conversation with, I've never told anybody this, but, and then fill in the blank.
You might be on the right track.
You've hit it because now he knows that you are a safe place. And if you're a safe place, it's anything goes because he is going to make sure that you get through it, whatever it is.
You just mentioned the next thing on my list. I think the guy or the gal that you select to become your buddy, your ranger buddy, needs to be totally honest with themselves, but they also need to be totally honest with you, meaning everybody needs somebody in their court that tells the emperor you're wearing no clothes instead of the emperor you're wearing new clothes.
You look great.
And most guys don't have a dude in their life that can be that honest with them.
Nope.
I'm saying I need a guy that can be that honest with me in my life. What about you? What's next on your list?
Somebody that believes in me more than I believe in myself. Back in the day, I wanted to be a competitive bodybuilder, and I had a training partner by the name of TC. I still don't know what the T and the C stood for. He was a big old Samoan dude, and this guy could literally
throw up huge weight, right?
He'd put all the wheels on the leg press.
Yeah.
And there were days when he would put more weight than I knew I could possibly ever bench on the bar, and they say, all right, I want to see two. I was like, dude, if you're lucky
crazy
if you get one.
Yeah.
I know my sternum is going to be broken in half by this bar when it comes down because it ain't going back up. And he would get in my face and scream at me, and I would actually get one of them up, and then he'd say, I told you were going to get two, and he'd smack the bar and push it down like, you got to give me one more. And it would start coming down, and I know mentally I'm done. There's no way that I'm going to be able to get this off my chest. And of course, if you lift weights, you know that the spotter is your salvation, right? And so I'm looking up at this upside down Samoan who's just yelling in my face. And I'd see his fingers up underneath the bar as he'd slowly lift the bar. And I'm like, oh, thank God. He's taking a few pounds off of me so I can get this thing up. And I'll never forget one time I racked it and I'm like, yes, I got one. He said, no, you got two. I said, the assist doesn't count. He said, no, because you were laying on your back, you didn't see that my fingers were a half an inch below the bar, and I literally just followed you up. I never touched the bar. That was all you. And he believed in me physically more than I believed in myself. My buddy David is the one who I used to work for him. And he told me, he was my boss. And one day I went to him and I said, I really believe that I'm being called into ministry and I need to quit. And his response was, well, why haven't you yet? I've known this forever.
Really?
Yeah. He said, why haven't you yet? I said, because I was on draw versus commission and I owed him a bunch of money. And he said, David, I'm a steward of God's money. That debt's forgiven. You go do what God's called you to do. And he is on my board of directors now. And obviously he's a vice president of our ministry. But this guy has believed in me when only my wife has. My wife and David are the two people that have believed in things like the video series, which was a ridiculous blessing to even have the opportunity to create. So someone that believes in me more than I believe in myself is probably top three for me.
All right. Well, here's number 3 on my list. They need to be loyal. And by this, I mean, they're not just using you to network to go get to another dude. And come on, you guys, people that are around you, they like to be around you, but in reality, what it really feels like is that they're just using a relationship with you to get to somebody who is maybe bigger or has more authority, more power, more money than you. So what's next on your list?
The ability to commit the time and to be the one that forgives me when I drop off the grid.
Yeah.
Consistency. And we're both equally guilty of becoming inconsistent. As a matter of fact,
You and David are?
Oh yeah. If we're radio silent for 5 days, one guy or the other, typically there's a comm shot that comes shortly thereafter. A call is made, a text is sent. Hey, I haven't seen you or heard from you. He knows me so well that he will call me out but there's never any judgment. And to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, there's a lot of prayer gossip out there too. You know, you get authentic in a small group and then suddenly everybody is looking at you when you walk in the church because you confess something to one of your brothers who you think there's trust there. And then he goes home and says, well, we really need to pray for Bob because he has a bit of a computer problem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, air quotes, computer
right.
problem.
So suddenly we've got confidence that's been compromised. So confidence is a huge one for me. Don't violate my confidence. It's spiritual Las Vegas. What I say to you stays with you.
Yeah.
And doesn't become a chapter in a book, an example on a podcast. I mean, we are walking through this life together. And so I want to be comfortable enough to be able to say absolutely anything without that confidence being violated. Yeah. There's got to be trust.
I'm going to give you my last two back to back because for me, Ranger Buddy is going to have to be fearless. And by that, I don't mean stands in front of a speeding train. I mean courageous enough that they're willing to look me in the eyes and say something that nobody wants to say out loud, but it really has to be said. They need to be willing to say, hey, I will stop you. I will punch you in the face if I have to stop you from wrecking your life. That's number 4 on my list. But number 5 on my list is you got to be a little bit crazy because let's just be honest, I'm a little bit crazy. And if you're going to try to come along, you're going to have to be a little bit crazy in this thing as well. Because, and this is my big segue right now, David, check this out. Because life is a battle. All of us are in the middle of a battle. Look, it's a battle just to get up, go to work, go home, and to do it all over again. All of us are going through this battle, and I shamelessly did that as a plug for your latest book. So tell everybody about the book Battle and describe the battle for manhood that you're trying to address in this book.
Well, this battle is a dual parallel, and I'm connected through a very odd set of clearly God-type circumstances that got me plugged into the 1st Battalion, 7th U.S. Cavalry Air Mobile. If you've seen the movie We Were Soldiers, you know the story very well of Hal Moore and a 395-member unit that hit the ground in the Central Highlands of Southern Vietnam on November 14th, 1965. I'm a bit of a history buff when it comes to this battle.
We couldn't tell.
And every reunion, I get to spend time with the people that were in the battle, not the people in the movie. You know, Mel Gibson's great.
Gibson's cool, but the guys that were in the battle
but
were a lot
Hal Moore
cooler.
was way cooler.
That's right.
You know, and
Totally
so
agree.
to get a chance to hang out with these guys who were obviously up in years at this point and sitting with each one of them, from company commander on down to the lowest ranking guy, a lot of believers in the room. A lot of, Lieutenant General Moore was a devout Christian.
Solid dude.
Yep. And a lot of, believe it or not, most of his team in Vietnam was as well. And so as I was hanging out with these guys, hearing these different stories about what they did, the things you don't see in the movie, the things you don't read in Joe and Hal's book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, these kind of backstories of the training that occurred right up the street at Fort Benning, and the use of helicopters, which had never been used before, and the M16 and its reliability or lack thereof, and what Sergeant Major Plumley was like, as I gathered all this intel, I learned very quickly that all the tactics, techniques, and procedures that worked to ensure victory on that battlefield, close air support, artillery fire control, fire and maneuver tactics, everything that they did on the battlefield. It all
came together for that one, yep.
It also works against the enemy that the Bible says wants to steal, kill, and destroy. If we take the same footprint that these guys used in battle, any battle, Mogadishu, same idea. The way that you fight and the way that we fight against this enemy that wants to prowl around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour are virtually the same. So I drew parallels between each chapter has a story and obviously a tactic, a small vignette from the battlefield or from the movie or both, because I'm a movie buff. My whole ministry is based on that. Whole ministry is based on movies. And then I draw a parallel biblically to it to ensure success. And the new book also has a 21-day devotional because 21 days forms a habit. And a lot of guys and gals don't have that spending time with God tactic down yet. So I wrote a very easy to read, very authentic devotional. My linchpin in writing is I'm very real about who I am.
Yeah.
And because I believe transparency breeds transparency. So that book is based on a battle that they made a movie out of. And I don't even know how it all started, but suddenly I found myself every year at these reunions for Landing Zone X-Ray.
Yeah, and it's not your first book. I want to point out you've got you wrote earlier Rough Cut Men, right?
Yeah.
Look, we believe in the book so much that at the end of this episode, we're going to tell you how you can get a free copy. We're going to try to give away a free digital copy of this book, The Battle by David. But I want to wrap up. You really helped guys. You're so serious about helping guys that you did this pretty impressive 6-part mini-series telling guys how to examine who's really got your 6. That's a military term. I'm going to describe the military term, got your 6 o'clock. But then I want you to describe this mini-series that you did. So 2 guys go out to battle, guy and gal, or 2 gals go out onto the battlefield. You can only see what's in front of you. You cannot be prepared for the enemy that's behind you. Using clock positions, you can see from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, or to 3 o'clock, but you can't see the 6 o'clock because it's behind you. Well, Forrest Gump style, if you find a buddy who comes along behind you and they've got your 6 and you've got their 6, now you both can protect and take care of each other, and you both are protected all the way around the clock. So you did this mini series. Tell everybody about who's got your 6. And really describe some of the amazing locations that you had a chance to film at.
Okay, so I told you I love movies, and I've been doing events since 2009 using different movie clips for biblical lessons for manhood, for support, encouragement, accountability, father wounding, legacy, all these different topics. And I had this vision that I always wanted to do a video series, but I did not want it to be me standing in front of a podium with a bunch of guys in the room and then flash over to a movie clip and then come back to my ugly mug on the platform again. So we decided, and this was originally developed for the U.S. Army Chaplain Corps, so that we could be in multiple locations at the same time with a facilitator's guide.
Yeah.
And chaplains could use this, whether they're, no matter where they are in the world, because it's a streaming series, could use it anywhere, to gather 3-4 guys, make a fire team out of it, and do this video series together. Well, then we released it to the church because it was a resource that we really believed that the church needed. I only wanted to do it one way, man. I wanted to go wherever the movies were filmed to do a walk and talk on location for each movie. So, for example, Forrest Gump, you mentioned, where Bubba and Forrest are sitting in the jungle, and he says, "You lean back against me, I'll lean right back against you." We filmed that in Beulah Battery, Alabama, where Forrest Gump was from, on the deck of a shrimp boat. And we also went to Savannah, Georgia, where he was sitting on the park bench and filmed there as well. Top Gun, we filmed on the deck of an aircraft carrier, and then up on the bridge right in front of an F-14 Tomcat over in Charleston Harbor. There happens to be the Yorktown has a nice F-14 Tomcat on the back end of the deck. So we
basically
filmed up there.
you said, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right.
Right. We raised $250,000, and it took about a year and a half. $250,000 of support without even nothing more than an idea.
Yeah.
People got the idea. So then we went Armageddon. We filmed partly on the floor of Mission Control at Johnson Space Center and partly in the Vehicle Assembly Building at Cape Canaveral in Florida. Oh my gosh. Rudy got to film the entire thing in the game day locker room at the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, also all over the campus and then out on the field and everything else. I got to hit the signs with my fist.
For all of you Fighting Irish fans, you know this.
I got to smack the "Play Like a Champion Today" sign in the tunnel on the way out onto the field. And then, of course, the Johnny Cash Walk the Line filmed in Sun Studio in Memphis, Tennessee, where Johnny recorded his first music, and partly at his boyhood home in Dice, Arkansas. And then the crown jewel of the entire thing is Saving Private Ryan, which we filmed partly on Omaha Beach and partly in the American Cemetery in France. We took the crew to France, and we filmed there for 3 or 4 days.
That place is special. Both Normandy Beach and the Normandy America Cemetery there, man. It is incredible. And I had a chance to see a little bit of the scenery and thinking, man, David, when you did this miniseries, you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you. And it's being used by literally hundreds of groups of men from South Africa, all over, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere.
So guys are You just got their attention by talking to them about some of these locations. And if they want to check out, if they want to find the miniseries, Who's Got Your Six, where do they go to find it?
Well, it's streaming content because the movie clips are actually embedded in the series.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to stay clean with fair use copyright law, we cannot give it to you on DVD. So you actually have to borrow it from us via stream. It's donation-based only. And it is on our website at roughcutmen.org. And then you just look for the video series drop down and it will give you all the information. And we designed it because we made it for the Army, where the rule is 50 mic and out.
Yeah.
An hour is 50
That's
minutes.
right.
We set it up so the videos are about anywhere from 18 to 23 minutes long. So you get guys together, you watch the video, you eat some food, and then you have a 30-minute discussion. There's a PDF facilitator guide for each episode it's self-guiding, and you're in and out the door in an hour. And we did that deliberately because our time as men is valuable, and it's hard to find a window.
Right. Guys are busy.
Yeah.
So are gals.
And numbers are nothing. We've got some of the best 4-man fire teams out there doing the video series over and over again. I mean, honestly.
We'll put a link, for those of you who are driving right now, we'll put a link in the notes to this episode about how to find the website. But let's say that they want to check out your latest book, The Battle. Where do people find that? Where can they get it?
You can get both of our books on the website as well. In the shop, we have a shop with all kinds of different stuff, but the books are there. You can also get it essentially in any platform, digital, audio, print form, anywhere you buy books. It's everywhere. It's Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. It's all over the place. So you can't not find it.
Yeah. Well, David, I just want to kind of wrap the episode up by thanking you, man. There are a lot of guys out there who are saying they wish they had a dude in their life like David is to you and you are to David, but I don't know how to get there. So one of the things that I wanted to do in this episode is to just lay out hey, if you wanted to try to find that guy, here's what you look for. If you want to try to start that conversation, here's the way you start it. And David, you laid that out perfectly today. So thanks for making the drive up from Florida to be live in the studio with me and to do this episode of Unbeatable.
Jeff, thank you so much. It's been an honor. Really appreciate it, man.
Thanks. Hey guys, you just heard about this amazing book called The Battle from David Dusek. And if you want a free copy of this book, we're going to give away a free digital copy. All you got to do is sign up at unbeatablearmy.com. Hey, if you've just found this podcast for the first time, maybe you just stumbled across us on social media, why don't you go ahead and follow us? You can pretty much search anywhere on any of the social media platforms. Just search at Unbeatable Podcast. Or better yet, if you found us and you like what you found, why don't you rate us on your favorite podcast platform? The reason this podcast exists is to just help you do what David described today. Help you get over some incredible challenges in life. And maybe what you need is a dude or a gal that you can depend on like David described. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Unbeatable.